Hi guys, and welcome back. Today I would like to show you something quite interesting. So I can just come up here and probably just check DeepSeek RI, and here, and I can say something like, "What can you tell me about the beautiful city of Vienna in Germany?" For example, and then I give that a minute. And now it's thinking. And if I expand this, of course, I see it's more or less using the DeepSeek reasoning model. And right here, also, I'm running like the latest version. And so, of course, I'm running this on my local PC, which I guess doesn't have so much compute power. That's also why it's kind of like slow in comparison. But the interesting thing, of course, is that this will do exactly what I would expect it to do, like you would with, of course, let's say if you're working with this DeepSeek AI or even ChatGPT, for example. But one crucial important thing you might have already noticed is that if you look over here, this is actually running on local host. So this means I have a copy of this software running locally, and it's pretty much behaves as it would should I be using any of the online versions of this um, um, GPT models hosted on public servers. And of course, the interesting thing is that I can actually do this and have and be 100% sure that my data would basically stay with me without me running into the risk of actually losing my information. And what's interesting thing, of course, this poses is that you could also do something, for example, at your workplace, because most of the huge problems with working with AI, most of the huge concerns, of course, is security. So this makes it quite interesting that you can actually help your company host like a local version of these GPT models, and it helps everybody within the company, and nobody is actually scared of actually the data running into the and getting into the wrong hands, basically. So I'm gonna collapse this and just wait for it to finish thinking, and then we'll see what the results will get back. And now I get back my results. So it tells me Jena, located in the Thuringian region of Germany, is a city seamlessly, and all that information. I'm just going to leave it to, of course, go ahead and print out all those results. But of course, this is what I would like to show you in this video, in this tutorial. It's a quite pretty easy, straightforward thing you can actually do to have to bring about this capability within your organization so that people can still work with some of the, some of these interesting AI models or GPT models as are being rolled out. But of course, you get to actually deploy this within your organization so that your data is not actually or doesn't leave the organization. And if you look up here, for example, you will see I have a couple of modules. I have called Llama, I have Mistral, I have DeepSeek, which is also what I'm using right now to interact. And I also have here for this one, All Intelligence or Alien Intelligence is I think how it's called. And this basically just helps to summarize documents. So you can actually provide this with a ton of documents, and it's going to be able to help you summarize them. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you how this whole thing could be set up without much further ado. So in principle, we actually need two things. So regardless of whether you're or working with a Mac or a Windows or a Linux machine, doesn't really matter. You should still be able to do all of this. I'm currently on a Windows machine, so I'm just gonna go ahead. I would probably just be able to show you how you can actually do this on a Windows machine. But again, this should be practically possible to be done on any other kind of OS or on any PC. Doesn't really matter. So the first thing we actually need is Ollama. So if you go to ollama.com, and we have the option of actually pulling and downloading. This is pretty straightforward. Again, if you look down here, this is available for macOS, Linux, and Windows. So just like I told you, it's really OS independent, and you can of course have this running on any PC. So once you go ahead and download this, of course, you can. There are a couple of ways this can be downloaded, but I'm on Windows right now, and the most straightforward way would just be to go ahead and download this. Pretty straightforward. And once I have this downloaded, again, if you're on Linux, you can also download again, just like I've shown you here. So once you have it downloaded, you should be able to pop open any of your terminals and now type Ollama, and this should, of course, now be in your path, and you should have access to the CLI application. And so now we can do things like Ollama, and I say list. And again, it's going to show me all the models which I just showed you a few minutes ago, which I have all installed up there, like I just showed you. And then, of course, you now have the option of using commands like Ollama, like to run a specific model, for example. And so once you have this installed, the next thing, of course, I would need you to have running available on your PC would be Docker. That's also why you see mine running down here. So you would need log Docker because the next application would be working with would be Open Web UI. So if you go over to openwebui.com, you would be greeted with this nice page. You can just go ahead and click on Get Open Web UI, or you can just go straight to the docs. And when you get to the docs, you would also be instructed how you can get started. Again, there are a couple of options depending on what capacity your PC has. So if you have like an NVIDIA GPU support, then you also get, of course, you're able to squeeze out additional compute. Basically, you have like you better performance actually. But if you don't, then you also have this other option. So the interesting thing, of course, is once you pull this image locally, if I bring my Docker desktop over here, and you can also see I have this running currently on my local PC as a Docker image. And if I come over to the images, I can also show you it's a really, really huge one. It's around 4.3 gigabytes. So it's a really huge one. But once you have these two things pulled, again, to pull this, you can basically just run these commands to run it in detached mode. And if, of course, in the first time, it's going to have to pull this image to run it. And after that, it wouldn't take that much time going forward should you try to start your application. But one thing you can always do to confirm your installation, that's also what I want to show you right now. So if you go to open your browser and type 127.0.0.1, which is basically your local host, and go to port 11434, you should get the message Ollama is running. So that's one way that you can actually confirm that is actually running, or that you have actually properly installed the application required, basically. So once we can confirm that Ollama is properly installed and we have Open Web UI properly running within a Docker container, you can come over here to Ollama, and then you can go to models, and you have this number of models, and whichever one of them, for example, this DeepSeek RI, which is also what I showed you I was interacting with initially. If you look over, you can see that there are like 12.1 million polls. So you can come over here, and to have this running locally, this is all you need. So Ollama run DeepSeek R1, and I can show you if I just copy this, open my terminal, and simply paste this. Because I already have this installed, it doesn't need to pull this again. But if you don't, it probably needs to. It's around 5 gigabytes again, depending on the number of. If you look over here, there are different sizes basically. So depending on the size, it's gonna decide on the number of or the duration it's gonna take this to, of course, get installed. And now I can actually just come here. If I don't know what to do, I can click this command. It's gonna show me a couple of options or as to what I could do. But again, you can basically start to interact with your AI model from here. But when you are done, you can simply go to click buy, and then it's gonna close this session. But guys, one thing I would need you to understand, of course, would be this. It's pretty straightforward to set this up, but you need to have experience working with Docker or working with Kubernetes. But specifically, you need to have experience working with Docker. Because if I should expand this, for example, and you would see the images I have pulled, and if I go to the containers, you will see the ones I have running. So locally, I only have the Open Web UI running. And also, again, like I showed you, currently the Ollama is running because otherwise this would not be able to connect to it, because what actually happens is that DeepSeek is able to connect with Ollama working locally and just pipes APIs to it. That's really what it does. So the Ollama on itself is more like, you can also think of it as a server, which is also currently running locally, because if you view your running apps, you will see it down there, and you will see the amount of memory it consumes in real time once you try to interact with it. It goes up and down depending on when you're asking questions and when you're not. So it's really, really interesting for you to understand, because if we should go to, for example, if I click on Open Web UI to view the logs, and if you look up here, you would see there are tons and tons of API requests being made to Ollama, basically. Because again, like we said, this is not really going out; it's local. That's also why you see this local API address here. So this is how it interacts with Ollama locally. And then you would ask yourself, when you log in, your credentials are stored and that of your users. When you create users, somehow it is stored somewhere. But because this is running locally, it has to also be managed locally. So that's why I said you really need to have experience working with Docker. And if you do already have experience working with Docker, your first, of course, guess would be that to this image there is an attached volume. So if I click on volumes, and I will see one here called Open Web UI. I have another one here called Simulator Data, but this is for some other application I work with. I'm working on. So, but if you click on this, now you would see a ton of what's really going on. All of this data is stored locally. So I'm not going to get into the details of how you could manage volumes when you have Docker deployed, let's say, to a cloud provider or with it to your company cloud, whatever the case might be, because that's really not the point of this tutorial. If you would want me to do that, there are already a lot of videos on this, but I don't mind, I wouldn't mind taking my time to really, really, just like I always try to do, explain it in ways you can understand it. But I just want you to understand that the data that you have or injected into Web UI and the one you generate also as you interact with the AI is stored somewhere. And with Docker, this is handled as an attached volume, which is basically like an attached, I would say, memory. Like is a portion of your memory on your PC is, of course, allocated to it. But of course, this is stuff within the Docker ecosystem. So there is an amount of memory allocated for the storage of this data. And what it means is that if somehow I lose this data, then it's just going to feel like I started working with Web UI newly. So there's going to be no users, there's going to be no data, I cannot see my chat history and all that. So just keep that in mind. I just wanted to point that out. So keep that in mind if you would want to do this going forward, guys. So, guys, like I already told you, if you're an admin, you can go to the admin panel and manage your users. And apart from just managing your users, you can create groups and then group your users. That's also what you see here. We can group users, assign them permissions as a group, and then manage them. And then here you can also manage permissions for that group. You can decide what they have access to and all that. And of course, the interesting thing, of course, is if you run your module locally or within your organizational network, and it depends, of course, the amount of compute power you've given it. If you also have like you run GPU servers, also again, if you use the cloud, it makes it a lot easier, but maybe not so cheaper. But yeah, you have that possibility. But anyways, if you do, and now you now have the options, for example, to come to your profile. So I can go to my profile. Let me see settings. I can go to settings, and I can go to my profile and I click on my API keys, and I'll see my JWT token. Now the interesting thing, of course, I can go ahead and create a new one if I want. This will be my API key, but again, I have my JWT token. But the interesting, of course, is if you read through the documentation, there are a lot of things you can do. Basically, you can actually now build apps within your organization that you would rather, for example, instead of maybe depending on, let's say, OpenAI to use their GPT and pay, or maybe DeepSeek, whatever, and use their APIs and pay, you can now actually, since you have a local copy running within your organization, you can now actually use this within your organization. So you don't have to pay for this anymore. You only pay for the compute power, like where you are running those GPT models. And so you can also call, for example, a simple API like this. So if I copied this and come back here and pasted it, of course, it's not going to go through. It's going to be unauthorized because, again, I provided this should be an actual API key. Again, if we come back to our Docker, go back to our containers, come to this guy, and again, just like I told you, you would see that request here. So again, like I told you, the web open web UI is just like a React app, something like that. But I'm guessing it has probably it's written in Python or something. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing so. And then it just interacts with Ollama under the hood via APIs. So, but if you have your API key, just like I did, I just prepared this curl command again, but again, I provided my API key. And now I can actually just provide that in here and make the same request again. And now I get my result back. So this is only going to show me the models that I have. And that's also what I see here. Again, if you go back to Docker, you would have seen this request here is succeeded. So that's really, it's pretty straightforward. So now you can build, if you need to build apps that actually require like chat functionalities to some AI model, you can run your models locally and then interact it via your app. You can interact with it with your app via API. So pretty straightforward. I'm quite interested. There's so much more you can actually do with this. I employ it, of course. Go ahead and explore it. Give me your feedbacks and let me know should you run into problems using any of the things I've just shown you. Okay, so if we come back here, and let me come back here. So when we get back here, the nice thing, of course, when you open this for the first time, you would be regarded as the admin because again, somehow the user management has to be handled in some way. So once you create the account, install this on your local PC, for example, you would be the admin. So that's also why if I head over here, I can go to my settings, I can do all of this stuff, and also if I come up here and click on my name, I get this admin panel. And now from here, I can actually manage users. And beyond this, I also have the option of, again, if you're running this with the organization, you also have the option of adding like system prompts to more or less filter what people could actually, or the kind of information they could actually get back, for example. So you can also come over here and let me see if is it from here, and then yes, come over here and also provide some system instructions. Again, you have the possibility, of course, to manage the users. You can create multiple workspaces, for example. You can decide or filter out what people can and cannot do. So you have all that flexibility. And again, you would be an admin. I also get to add all the users basically. So we can, let me come back here, go to admin panel, come back in here. I have the option of actually adding new users. So again, there is a CSV import where you are also provided with, if you also look over here, you can download like a template file basically, and it shows how to arrange those user information. They would be invited, they would get an email, and then you manage them basically. And of course, when you host this within your company network, you can provide a firewall basically, and your users can only access this if they are logged into the company network. So somehow again, this stays local. Again, if this is something anyone desires, maybe in the future, I can, when we start actually going more into the architectural design and setup, especially within the Azure setup, within the Azure cloud. For now, this is also something I would be glad to go into to show you how we can do a lot of this networking, set up firewalls, manage users, define rights and all that, decide who would be having access to what. And I have a lot of those planned in the future. That's really a ton of work for me, but I'm really excited to really take you on that journey. So, but anyway, guys, once you have this set up, again, like I just showed you, just two things: Open UI, Open Web UI, and of course Ollama. Once you have this installed, this can also be deployed as Kubernetes pods, so you can again manage this however you would already have managed like a Kubernetes cluster, or you have that flexibility. So, and that's really all you need to have this installed. Again, you can always come in here again, pull as many images as possible, sorry, as many models as possible. Again, depending on what specific model you would like your users within your company to have access to. So anyway, guys, it's a short one of what I wanted to show you. Of course, feel free if anything is not clear. If you have problems setting this up, feel free to reach out, ask me questions, and even doesn't have to do with setting it up on Windows. If you have like a Linux machine or a Mac, of course, feel free to ask me if you ever run into problems. But I'm thinking this is pretty straightforward to set up. But if you do, of course, feel free to reach out to me. I would be glad to help. And that will be all, guys. Yeah, that's all I wanted to show you on this quick one. So have a great evening, guys. Stay connected, stay tuned, and I will always bring you interesting topics. Anyways, until we see each other.